This is one of the most dangerous plants in human history. It created morphine, led to heroin, and eventually gave the world fentanyl, a drug so powerful that just a few tiny grains can kill a person. But the terrifying part is, none of this started as an attempt to destroy human lives. It started with medicine, with pain relief, with a beautiful flower growing quietly in the fields. Thousands of years ago, in the region that is now modern-day Turkey, humans discovered something strange. A delicate flower with white, purple, and red petals, the opium poppy, scientifically known as Papaver somniferum. At first, it looked harmless, but when people cut into its seed pod, a milky white sap slowly leaked out and hardened under the sun. That substance was raw opium, and it changed human civilization forever. Ancient Sumerians were among the first to cultivate it nearly 5,000 years ago. They even gave it a name, the plant of joy, because they discovered something almost magical. Opium could reduce pain, cause sleep, and create an intense feeling of calm and comfort. Today, that might not sound revolutionary, but back then, pain was everywhere. A broken bone, an infected tooth, a deep cut, even minor injuries could become unbearable nightmares. And surgery was closer to torture than medicine. There was no anesthesia, no modern painkillers. Doctors often had to physically hold patients down during operations. The faster a surgeon worked, the greater the chance the patient survived the pain. So when opium appeared, it felt like a miracle. For centuries, it spread across civilizations, used to treat pain, diarrhea, insomnia, coughing, and countless other illnesses. Entire trade routes formed around it. Empires made fortunes from it. And eventually, countries went to war over it. In the 19th century, Britain illegally flooded China with opium, creating millions of addicts. When China tried to stop the trade, it triggered the Opium Wars, a conflict that permanently reshaped global politics. But raw opium had a problem. It was unpredictable. Different plants contained different strengths. Some doses barely worked. Others killed people. So scientists became obsessed with isolating the substance responsible for opium's effects. And then, everything changed. In 1804, a German pharmacist named Friedrich Serturner successfully isolated the main active compound inside opium, morphine, named after Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams. Morphine was stronger than raw opium, cleaner, more reliable, and for the first time in history, pain could truly be controlled. Morphine revolutionized medicine. Major surgeries that were once considered impossible suddenly became survivable. Doctors could operate longer, more precisely, more aggressively. On battlefields, morphine became essential. Especially during the American Civil War, wounded soldiers carried it everywhere. For many people, it was the first time in human history that unbearable pain could simply disappear. But there was a darker side, because morphine didn't just block pain, it hacked the brain itself. Normally, pain signals travel through the nervous system into the brain. Morphine interrupts that process by attaching to opioid receptors. But while doing that, it also activates the brain's reward system. It doesn't just remove suffering, it can create intense pleasure, warmth, comfort, euphoria. And the human brain quickly learns to crave that feeling again. After the war, massive numbers of soldiers became dependent on morphine. The addiction became so common it earned a nickname, the soldier's disease. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because scientists believed they could improve morphine, make it safer, less addictive, more effective. Instead, they accidentally created one of the most destructive drugs in human history. In 1874, English chemist C.R. Alderwright modified morphine in a laboratory. He added small chemical groups, called acetyl groups, to the molecule. The result was a new substance, diacetylmorphine, later known as heroin. And here's the terrifying part. Heroin is chemically very similar to morphine. Just a small modification. A few molecular changes, that's it. But those tiny changes allowed heroin to cross into the brain far faster than morphine, which meant the euphoric effects hit almost instantly. Stronger, faster, more intense. And almost nobody realized how dangerous it truly was. In the late 1800s, the German pharmaceutical company, Bayer, began marketing heroin as a safer alternative to morphine, a miracle medicine, a cough suppressant, a non-addictive painkiller. Yes, heroin was once sold legally in pharmacies. And it may have become one of the greatest medical backfires in history. At first, doctors loved it. Patients loved it. It seemed cleaner and more effective than morphine. But then reality hit. People became addicted incredibly fast. Because once heroin enters the brain, it converts back into morphine. But by then, the euphoric rush has already overwhelmed the reward system. By the early 1900s, heroin addiction exploded across Europe and the United States. In 1914 alone, New York City reportedly had around 200,000 heroin addicts, and governments slowly realized they had created a disaster. Heroin was eventually banned in many countries, but the story still didn't end there, because humanity kept searching for the perfect painkiller, and every attempt seemed to create something even more dangerous. Throughout the 20th century, scientists developed new opioids, OxyContin, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, all designed to manage pain more effectively. Then came OxyContin, released in 1996 by Purdue Pharma. It was marketed as a breakthrough treatment for chronic pain. Doctors were told it was safe, low risk, less addictive. Sound familiar? Millions of prescriptions flooded across America. At first for severe pain, then for back pain, joint pain, post-surgery recovery, even moderate discomfort. And then everything spiraled out of control. Patients developed tolerance. Higher doses became necessary. Some people turned to heroin because it was cheaper and easier to obtain than prescription opioids. According to the CDC, widespread opioid prescribing played a major role in triggering what became known as the opioid epidemic, one of the worst public health disasters in modern history. More than 1 million Americans have died from drug overdoses since 1999. That is more American deaths than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined. But even then, the worst was still coming. Fentanyl. Unlike morphine or heroin, fentanyl does not come directly from the opium poppy. It is almost entirely synthetic, designed in a laboratory. In 1959, Belgian chemist Paul Janssen created fentanyl while searching for a more powerful medical anesthetic, and he succeeded too well. Fentanyl binds extremely strongly to opioid receptors, and because it dissolves into fatty tissue so efficiently, it reaches the brain with terrifying speed. It is roughly 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine, and just a few milligrams, an amount small enough to fit on the tip of a pencil, can stop a person's breathing, For decades, fentanyl remained mostly a specialized hospital drug used for surgery and extreme pain. Then the illegal drug market discovered it. And that changed everything. Fentanyl was cheap to produce, easy to transport, and unbelievably potent. Tiny amounts could create thousands of doses. Soon, illegal fentanyl began appearing everywhere, mixed into heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, even fake prescription pills. And the most horrifying part? Many users never even knew they were taking fentanyl. Overdose deaths skyrocketed throughout the 2010s and 2020s. Fentanyl transformed the opioid crisis into a mass casualty catastrophe. But maybe the darkest part of this story is that none of these substances were originally created to destroy humanity. Morphine was made to relieve suffering. Heroin was designed to replace morphine. Fentanyl was created for medical anesthesia. They were tools, powerful tools, and human beings kept underestimating what those tools could do to the brain. Because the line between medicine and addiction is sometimes only a few molecules wide. A beautiful flower created modern pain relief, changed surgery forever, helped millions survive unbearable suffering. But it also led humanity into one of the deadliest addiction crises in modern history. And perhaps that has always been the dark side of medical progress. The same invention that saves lives can also destroy them.